Listen to me carefully, because this is the truth that most people never grasp. By success isn't about talent, luck, or waiting for the perfect moment. It's about showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it, even when life is messy, unfair, confusing. Consistency is the invisible force that turns small efforts into unstoppable momentum, that transforms chaos into clarity and fear into power. You don't wait for motivation, you create it through action. Force yourself to be consistent, and suddenly the doors start opening, opportunities appear, and everything in your life begins to fall into place. Consistency is never born out of emotion. It doesn't come from those perfect mornings when you're energized, inspired, and ready to conquer the world. Anyone can take action on those days. The real shift, the real transformation begins when you stop relying on how you feel and start relying on who you choose to be. Because the truth is simple. If you only act when you feel like it, you will never build the life you dream of. Every person who has ever created something extraordinary had to reach a moment where they said, I'm done letting my emotions make my decisions. That's the moment where consistency truly starts. There comes a time in your life where you have to look in the mirror and say, I'm the one steering this ship, not the fear, not the doubt. Not the fatigue, not the excuses. You in that moment right there is a decision, not a mood, not a vibe, a decision. People talk about motivation like it's some magical fuel that appears when the universe feels generous. But motivation isn't the starting point, it's the reward for taking action. You don't wait for fire to move, you move and the fire shows up. And here's what no one tells you: the first action is almost always uncomfortable. Your mind will argue, your body will resist, and your old patterns will pull you back into the familiar. Because the brain prefers what's known, even if what's known is the very thing keeping you stuck. So you have to override that system. You have to override that voice that says, not today, and replace it with today is non-negotiable. That's where personal power is built. Not in the moments where everything feels aligned, but in the moments where nothing feels aligned and you show up anyway. Think about the people you admire, the ones who inspire you, the ones you look at and say, how do they do it? They don't have more time, they don't have more energy, they don't have less fear. They simply made a decision. Most people avoid they decided to be consistent even when it was boring, inconvenient, uncomfortable, or uncertain. And that one decision separated them from the crowd. Not talent, not luck, not timing, a decision. When you shift from being emotionally driven to decision driven, something incredible happens. Your actions become predictable even when life isn't. Your progress becomes inevitable even when results aren't visible yet. And your confidence doesn't come from achievements. It comes from self-trust. Because every time you force yourself to show up, you're sending yourself a message, I can count on me. That builds a level of certainty that no setback can shake. People think confidence comes from success, but real confidence comes from consistency, from proving to yourself day after day that you follow through. When you no longer break promises to yourself, when you no longer negotiate with your excuses, when you no longer let your emotions decide whether you move forward or stay stuck. That's the kind of confidence that changes lives, not the loud kind, not the showy kind, the quiet, unshakable kind that comes from self-respect. And yes, there will be days where everything inside you wants to stop. Days where life hits you harder than expected. Days where the old habits feel easier, the old patterns feel familiar, and the old stories start whispering again. But that's when the decision matters most. Consistency isn't built on perfect days. It's built on the imperfect ones, the days where you push through regardless. The days where you choose growth over comfort. The days where you realize that your future is being shaped right now in this moment with this choice. There is a version of you waiting on the other side of that decision. A stronger version, a more disciplined version. A more focused, grounded, unstoppable version. But you don't meet that version by hoping. You don't meet that version by wishing. You meet that version by acting again and again, no matter how you feel. And when you do that, life begins to rearrange itself around your consistency. Opportunities start appearing. Patterns start changing. People start responding differently. And suddenly, everything that felt scattered begins to fall into place. Not by accident, but because you made it inevitable. Emotion may spark an idea, but decision builds a destiny. And the moment you decide that consistency is who you are, not something you tray, not something you attempt, but something you embody, everything in your life starts to shift. That's where the real transformation begins. Every huge obstacle you see in life starts out looking terrifying because it's big, unfamiliar, and overwhelming. When you stand in front of it, it feels like it's too much to handle, like it's bigger than you, like you could never overcome it. But here's the thing, no obstacle is actually that big. The size of a problem only feels real when you measure it against your fear. And fear has a way of making mountains out of molehills, convincing you that the challenge is impossible before you even try. The truth is, nothing is insurmountable when you break it down into small, consistent steps. That's where the magic begins. You see, progress isn't made in giant leaps. It's made in small, repeated actions that compound over time. Most people underestimate the power of tiny steps because they are looking for quick fixes, instant results, or dramatic breakthroughs. But the reality is life's most meaningful changes happen quietly, incrementally, one action at a time. Every small step you take chips away at the obstacle. Every action, no matter how insignificant it seems in the moment, is a victory that brings you closer to your goal. Consistency transforms these small steps into unstoppable momentum. Imagine trying to eat an entire elephant in one bite. Sounds ridiculous, right? Yet that's exactly how people approach their challenges. They see the elephant, the massive obstacle, and they freeze, they procrastinate, they doubt themselves. But the strategy isn't to conquer it all at once. It's to cut it into pieces. Take one bite at a time, one small, manageable piece. That's how you turn something that seems impossible into something achievable. And once you've mastered a few bites, suddenly the elephant doesn't seem so terrifying anymore. The momentum builds, confidence grows. And before you know it, the obstacle that once paralyzed you is now just another step you've overcome. Consistency is the engine that drives this process. It's not about doing a huge thing once and hoping it will solve everything. It's about showing up daily, repeatedly, relentlessly. It's about creating a rhythm of progress that slowly but surely overwhelms the obstacle. Each small step reinforces your belief in yourself. Each repetition builds trust in your ability to handle what comes your way. And here's the thing, once you start proving to yourself that you can handle even the smallest challenges, your mind begins to see larger challenges differently. They become problems you can solve, not threats you need to avoid. The human brain is wired to respond to patterns. When you take consistent action, you create patterns of success that your mind recognizes and reinforces. Every time you follow through, every time you complete a small step, your brain records it as proof. I am capable. I can do this. Over time, these small wins accumulate, forming a foundation so strong that no obstacle can shake it. The mountain that once loomed over you shrinks into a series of small hills, each one conquerable, each one a testament to your commitment and persistence. And it's not just about breaking the obstacle down for practical reasons. It's about breaking it down emotionally. Fear thrives on the unknown, on the perception of immensity. When you focus on the next small step instead of the entire problem, fear loses its power. Suddenly, the task doesn't feel paralyzing anymore. It feels doable. It feels like something you can handle. You regain control over your mind and your emotions. You shift from being overwhelmed by what could go wrong to being focused on what you can do right now. That shift is powerful. That shift is transformative. There's a universal law at play here. Small, consistent actions compound into massive results. What seems insignificant today becomes monumental tomorrow. The challenge you're facing now will not break you if you commit to incremental progress. Life doesn't ask you to move mountains in a day. It asks you to move a little every day. And those little movements repeated over time will carry you further than any single act of heroism ever could. Momentum is created through consistency, and momentum transforms obstacles into stepping stones. The moment you understand this, you stop fearing the size of your challenges. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to start or the perfect conditions to appear. You act. You take that first step, and then the next. You chip away at the obstacle until it no longer has the power to intimidate you. You build a rhythm of achievement that cannot be stopped. And in that rhythm, in that relentless pursuit of small, consistent actions, you discover the truth. What once felt impossible becomes inevitable. Step by step, action by action, you break down every obstacle into something you can handle, and suddenly, everything that seemed overwhelming starts falling into place. Discipline isn't something you find outside of yourself. It doesn't exist in a book you read or in some motivational speech you hear. Real discipline begins with identity. It begins with the understanding that who you are is more important than what you do, because what you do flows directly from who you believe yourself to be. Most people think they need discipline first, and then they'll become the person they want to be. That's backwards. You become the person first, and then the habits, the consistency, and the results follow naturally. Identity drives action, and action solidifies identity. That's how true change happens. Think about it this way. If you see yourself as someone who gives up when it's hard, you will act like someone who gives up. Every excuse, every delay, every moment of inaction is simply you living up to your identity. You're proving to yourself who you think you are. But the amazing part is this identity is flexible. It is not fixed. You can redefine yourself at any moment. And when you do, your behaviors realign with that new identity. This is the key to becoming consistent. You don't rely on fleeting motivation or temporary inspiration. You rely on the fact that your actions are now the natural expression of who you are. When you declare even to yourself, I am the type of person who shows up no matter what. Suddenly doing what needs to be done doesn't feel like a struggle. It doesn't require endless willpower. It doesn't demand that you convince yourself to start every day. You act because that's what this version of you does. Your mind stops arguing with you because it recognizes that consistency isn't negotiable anymore. It's not a chore. It's not a burden. It's a reflection of your identity. And once that shift happens, you operate on a completely different level. Most people wait until they feel ready to take on a challenge. They wait for confidence, for clarity, for the perfect alignment of circumstances. But identity bypasses all of that. You don't wait to be confident. You act like the confident person you are becoming, and confidence comes after the action. You don't wait to feel disciplined. You act like the disciplined person you are becoming, and the discipline strengthens with every repeated step. It's a cycle that feeds itself. The more you act in alignment with your desired identity, the stronger that identity becomes. And the stronger that identity becomes, the easier it is to act consistently. Let me be clear. This isn't some vague idea or wishful thinking. It's a practical, actionable truth. If you want to be someone who achieves, someone who pushes past excuses, someone who shows up every day regardless of circumstances, you have to first decide, this is who I am. You have to internalize it. You have to let it seep into every thought, every choice, every action. And then when life throws challenges at you, when doubt tries to creep in, You don't falter because you are living in alignment with your identity. You don't make exceptions for bad days or inconvenient moments because consistency is not negotiable for the person you are becoming. This is why trying to build discipline without changing your identity is like trying to run a car with no engine. You can try to push forward, you can try to force yourself, but it will always feel exhausting, unreliable, and temporary. You will struggle to show up when it matters most. But when identity drives action, it becomes effortless, it becomes automatic. The habits you desire, the routines you want, the results you crave, they all start to happen naturally because they are the logical outcome of the person you have chosen to become. And here's the subtle, powerful truth. This doesn't happen overnight. Identity shifts gradually. You show up, you act. You reinforce the story you are telling yourself. And with repetition, the new identity becomes unshakable. Eventually, people will notice the change in you, but more importantly, you will feel it yourself. You will stop questioning, stop negotiating, stop relying on external motivation. You will simply do what needs to be done because that is who you are. That is the person you become. Once you accept this, once you internalize it, consistency stops being a challenge. Obstacles no longer derail you because you act from the foundation of a person who overcomes. Excuses no longer hold power because they are no longer compatible with your identity. Momentum becomes inevitable because your actions are the natural extension of who you are. And in that space, everything you want begins to align, not because life is easier, but because you are unstoppable from the inside out. When your identity becomes your anchor, consistency isn't a struggle, it's your standard. Momentum is not something you stumble upon. It doesn't appear because the conditions are perfect or because everything in your life has finally aligned. Momentum is built piece by piece through action, repetition, and persistence. Most people wait for motivation to arrive, thinking they need that surge of energy before they can move forward. But the truth is the opposite. You don't wait for momentum. You create it by starting, even when you don't feel like it. You take that first step, messy and imperfect, and then the next one, and the next one after that. And it is through these repeated actions that the invisible force of momentum begins to accumulate. At first, it may feel like you're pushing against an immovable wall. Every step forward seems small, almost meaningless. You might doubt whether your efforts are making any difference at all. That's normal. That's the threshold where most people quit. They expect results to appear instantly, so when they don't, they stop. But momentum is not instant gratification. Momentum is the product of consistent effort over time. It's like rolling a massive boulder. The first push is the hardest, the one that tests every ounce of your strength. But once it begins to move even slightly, each subsequent push becomes easier. The energy you put in compounds, and soon the boulder is rolling with unstoppable force. That is what happens in life when you refuse to quit, when you show up, when you commit to moving forward no matter how small the step. The secret is simple. Action precedes motivation, not the other way around. You cannot wait until you feel ready or inspired. You must act, and in acting, inspiration and confidence follow. Every time you force yourself to take action when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or uncertain, you are building invisible momentum. Each of these actions reinforces the idea that you are capable, that you can overcome resistance, and that progress is not only possible, but inevitable. Momentum feeds on consistency. The more you move, the faster you go, the more you persist, the easier it becomes to keep going. Think about people who achieve extraordinary results. What separates them from everyone else is not luck or talent. It's the ability to generate momentum in their lives. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't wait for clarity. They don't wait for inspiration. They act, they repeat, they persist. And the energy that is created from these repeated actions carries them forward, sometimes faster than they could have imagined. That energy becomes a force that propels them past obstacles, beyond limitations, and into new possibilities. Momentum also has a way of changing your mindset. When you're stagnant, it's easy to doubt yourself, to overthink, to question your ability to succeed. But once you begin to move consistently, each action builds confidence, each small win reinforces your capability, and soon you find that fear and hesitation have less influence over your decisions. You start to trust yourself because you have proof in action. That trust fuels further momentum, creating a cycle that becomes unstoppable. One action leads to another, one small victory sets up the next, and before long, what seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable. The challenge is that the hardest part of momentum is the very beginning. That first step, the initial push against resistance, requires courage. It requires commitment. It requires the willingness to act even when you don't feel ready. But here's the promise: the moment you push through that resistance, you start a chain reaction. Energy builds, confidence grows, and the path forward becomes clearer. Momentum is not just about speed, it's about persistence. It's about showing up again and again until the force you've created carries you beyond the obstacles that once seemed immovable. Every time life throws distractions, doubts, or difficulties in your path, momentum becomes your ally. It gives you a power that surpasses motivation, that surpasses luck, that surpasses talent. You become unstoppable not because the world has changed, but because you have created an internal force that moves you forward no matter what. And here's the subtle truth: once you've learned how to create momentum, you can harness it in every area of your life. Momentum doesn't discriminate. It amplifies whatever energy you feed it. Feed it with focus, action, and consistency, and it transforms ordinary efforts into extraordinary results. Momentum is built in the moments where no one is watching. It is forged when you do the work that feels uncomfortable, when you push past resistance, and when you keep moving even when results are not yet visible. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary. That is how small, repeated actions create unstoppable force. That is how the life you want becomes inevitable. Start, push, momentum will do the rest. Most people approach life with a secret exit strategy. They keep a safety net, a backup plan, or a set of excuses ready just in case things get hard. And here's the problem: the moment you leave the door open, your mind will use it. As long as there's an option to quit, to delay, to settle, you will find a way to take it. That's how procrastination, fear, and inconsistency creep into your life. It's not a matter of willpower, it's a matter of design. You are programming yourself to look for the exit instead of going all in. If you want extraordinary results, you must remove the exit doors. Commit fully, and then watch your life rise to meet that level of commitment. Commitment is not a casual thing. It's not something you do when it feels convenient or easy. It's a total decision to engage with life fully without negotiating with yourself. The moment you stop giving yourself permission to quit, your brain shifts. Suddenly, you are forced to find solutions, to dig deeper, to adapt. There is no plan B, so your creativity, your focus, and your energy become sharper. Obstacles that once seemed insurmountable are no longer threats. They are challenges to be solved because failure is no longer an option. This is the power of removing the exit doors in your life. It transforms hesitation into action and excuses into innovation. Think about the people who achieve the extraordinary. They don't just want results, they commit themselves fully to the process. They burn the safety nets, the just-in-case plans, and the excuses that keep most people stuck. When you have no option to turn back, you move differently. You move with urgency, clarity, and purpose. You stop negotiating with yourself about whether today is the right day or whether you have enough energy, motivation, or resources. You simply act, because acting is now the only option. And in that relentless pursuit, your focus sharpens, your persistence strengthens, and you become unstoppable. Most people fail not because they lack talent or opportunity, but because they leave the door open to quit. They say, if it doesn't work out, I'll try something else. And when the first sign of difficulty appears, they take it, they retreat, they compromise. But when you commit fully, that retreat is no longer possible. The only way forward is forward. And your mind, your body, and your energy align to make it happen. Commitment forces action, and action creates results. When you refuse to leave an exit, the universe recognizes your seriousness, and opportunities begin to appear that were invisible before. It's also about your inner dialogue. As long as you are keeping yourself in just-in-case mode, you're subconsciously telling yourself, I might not make it. That uncertainty manifests in hesitation, distraction, and half-hearted effort. But when you remove the exit doors, your internal dialogue changes. You tell yourself, there is no other way. I am doing this no matter what. And that belief drives you to take consistent action. Your energy becomes focused, your attention sharp, and your efforts aligned. You move from surviving to thriving because there is no room for compromise, no space for doubt, and no permission to quit. Commitment also changes how others respond to you. When people see that you are all in, that you have eliminated the option to turn back, they respect you differently. They trust your decisions, they follow your lead, and they offer opportunities they might not otherwise share. Removing the exit doors is not just an internal strategy, it's a signal to the world that you are serious, that you will follow through, and that you cannot be stopped. That alignment between your internal commitment and external perception amplifies your results in ways that ordinary effort never could. And here's the paradox: removing the exit doors doesn't limit you, it frees you. It frees you from indecision, hesitation, and fear. It eliminates the constant negotiation with yourself over whether to start, whether to continue, or whether to give up. When you commit fully, every action becomes meaningful, every obstacle becomes a challenge to solve, and every setback becomes a stepping stone. The moment you accept that failure is not an option, your mind starts to work in ways it never has before. Solutions appear, energy appears, creativity appears, and suddenly the impossible begins to feel inevitable. The key is total engagement. It's not about doing more for the sake of activity, it's about eliminating the option to quit so that your focus, your effort, and your intention are aligned completely. Life begins to respond to that level of commitment. People, circumstances, and opportunities start appearing to match your seriousness. You stop being reactive. You stop being wishful. You start being unstoppable. Burn the excuses, close the doors, commit fully, and watch your life respond. When you commit to consistency, something extraordinary happens that most people never notice. Life starts to align around you. People, opportunities, clarity, and confidence begin to appear not by chance, but as a natural consequence of your unwavering presence and repeated action. The universe doesn't reward hesitation or inconsistency. It responds to energy, focus, and commitment. The moment you start showing up relentlessly, something shifts. The chaos that used to surround you begins to organize. Doors that were once closed begin to open. Situations that felt random and disconnected begin to fall into a pattern. Consistency is the signal you send that says, I am serious, I am committed, and I will not quit. And when you send that signal, life starts responding in kind. Think about the people who seem to have it all together, the ones who move with a sense of inevitability. They don't have perfect lives, perfect timing, or perfect circumstances. What they do have is consistent action. They show up day after day in good times and bad, and in doing so, they create an orbit around themselves where opportunities naturally gravitate. People are drawn to them because they can trust them. Circumstances begin to shift because they recognize the momentum being built. and clarity appears because the repeated steps of consistent effort carve a path through confusion and doubt. Consistency has a way of organizing not only your actions, but also your world. When you are consistent, confidence grows. Not the loud, flashy kind that depends on external validation, but the quiet, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. Each time you follow through, you prove to yourself that you are capable, that you can persevere, and that you can achieve results. And as your confidence grows, so does your ability to attract the people, opportunities, and resources you need. The consistent actions you take create credibility, reliability, and trust. Others begin to see you as someone who delivers, someone who persists, someone whose word and effort means something. That energy becomes magnetic. That energy becomes influence. That energy begins to organize life around you in ways that nothing else can. Clarity is another gift that comes from consistency. When you take repeated action, even without perfect understanding or complete certainty, patterns emerge. You start to see what works and what doesn't. You start to notice which choices move you forward and which hold you back. Life is often messy, confusing, and unpredictable, but consistency acts as a compass. It creates a framework within which you can navigate uncertainty. Each small, repeated step reduces chaos and increases understanding. You begin to make decisions from a place of insight, not fear. You begin to see the path clearly because you have been walking it one step at a time, relentlessly, without hesitation. Opportunities appear when you are consistent because you create an energy that attracts them. You become visible not in a superficial sense, but in the sense that the universe recognizes your persistence. People notice commitment. Circumstances respond to commitment. Doors that were invisible to you before suddenly appear because the momentum you have built signals that you are ready. Opportunities are not given randomly. They are aligned with energy, effort, and persistence. When you consistently show up, you are aligning yourself with the possibilities that you might have missed if you had been inconsistent, distracted, or hesitant. Consistency also builds resilience. Life is not a straight line. There will be setbacks, failures, and moments of doubt. But when you are consistent, each setback becomes manageable. Each challenge becomes a temporary detour rather than a reason to quit. Consistency trains you to respond instead of react, to adapt instead of retreat, and to persist instead of procrastinate. You develop a rhythm in your life that cannot be easily broken, a momentum that carries you through the storms, and a confidence that nothing can shake. Life aligns with you because you are no longer reactive. You are proactive, disciplined, and present. And here's the subtle truth that most people miss. When you're consistent, you don't have to chase life. Life begins to move toward you. Circumstances shift in your favor. The right people show up at the right time. Clarity appears where there was once confusion. Doors open that you didn't even see before. Momentum builds naturally because you are no longer waiting for luck or timing. You are creating both with your actions. Everything starts to fall into place because consistency creates alignment between who you are, what you do, and the results you produce. The power of consistency is that it transforms chaos into order, uncertainty into clarity, and potential into reality. When you commit to showing up every day, no matter the obstacles, life organizes itself around your effort. People notice, opportunities appear, confidence grows, and clarity emerges. What once seemed scattered or random begins to make sense. Life starts to move in your favor, not because the universe owes you, but because you have created the conditions for it to respond. Show up, persist, repeat, and watch everything begin to fall into place.